Welcome back to another episode of Buckle Up with Simon and Brian, an ultra running conversation. Simon, how are you?
Ryan, I'm struggling. Winter is finally coming to San Diego. It's getting really cold out there in the 60s. So I'm thinking
Oh
about
my
getting a
gosh.
treadmill.
Come on, man. Come on now. Seriously?
Yeah,
60s?
seriously, okay? I'll ask Santa to get me a treadmill. I need
I
it.
won't see the 60s till April.
Yes. Yeah.
I do enjoy my treadmill. I run on it quite a bit. Again, I get way below the 60s, and I won't see the 60s until March or April if I'm lucky. I'll have to drive away from here to see those temperatures. But I do
Well,
enjoy my
what
treadmill, yeah.
but when you run on your treadmill, Brian, is it good for your knees? How do your knees feel about it?
It is good on the knees. It's a little bit softer surface. It's not as hard as pavement. I do have a little bit of an issue. I don't try to spend a ton of time on it. I don't like that I can't lean into it because it's not moving and I need to run in an upright position. I'm really excited about this episode. We just got done talking with Wayne, the Average Savage. You can find him on Instagram at the Average Savage. He is not average, even though he says that in his name.
Yeah, it was a great discussion. I don't know if you can hear it, but we're all smile, Brian and me. Um, And Wayne definitely he cursed a lot, and that's definitely on me. I said that he could, but I think beyond this kind of exterior facade, and I mean the guy is an army or was an army ranger, so obviously a really tough guy. But at the end of the day, it's someone that I follow and I find particularly interesting to follow because it's someone that I see has his priority well lined up. It's not just about being tough, but it's about pushing your limit. It's about your family. It's about all of these things that are really important. You can see it from his channel having the right priority in general.
He's a girl dad. I can relate. Obviously, I have two girls of my own at home, so I'm a girl dad, and he kind of gets mushy talking about the girls. This Average Savage ex Ranger gets kind of mushy talking about his daughters, which is it's pretty funny and pretty cute to see. So
Yeah,
he's got a soft side to him as well.
you can tell who's the boss at home, actually. But it was a really interesting story for me also because it was not just about running and ultra running, but it was also about the broader picture about finding a purpose in life, about growing up, about pushing your own limit, and finding, a purpose, but also an identity, which of course he found eventually through being a ranger, but then eventually coming out of the military, struggling a little bit and finding himself, and eventually discovering different avenue that could help him keep pushing both. His limit in terms of learning, but also his physical limits, such as in ultra running.
Yeah, that's right. It is an interesting dynamic where these guys come out of the service and they are full of piss and vinegar and camaraderie and just driven and hard charging. Our civilian world isn't that way, unfortunately. So he has to dissect his priorities a little bit. He has to find sport. He has to find purpose at home. He has to find purpose in what he's doing for work and a position and a job in life and kind of divvy it up a little bit better than he did when he was in the Rangers. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the episode, and we will be back with more content as quickly as we can get it out. Thanks. Wayne, thanks so much for coming on to the show this evening. How are you doing?
Good, man. Can't complain. It's starting to get cool, and I'm done melting in the southern heat, so everything's looking up.
It's funny that you say it's starting to get cold. I was just sharing offline that the ski resort local in my neighborhood here in Western Colorado just opened up. Starting to get cold for you, and I think it was like 18 degrees today is a bit of a different change. So, where in the world are you?
Yeah, I'm in Springfield, Virginia. It's like right underneath DC, so we might get like a couple days of snow, which is a weird change for me because I grew up in Montana. So I'm used to your neck of the woods, Morley. I'm aching for the snow, aching for like climbing up frozen mountains and all that. But my wife is like, no way, we're not moving to Montana.
You gotta lure her somehow. You can't just cold turkey ask her to move there. There has to be something there.
Yeah, I have to get a trip, and then it'll
Yep.
somewhat seduce her for the area because it's like less traffic, community, mountain trails. Like there's so much more than like DC. DC is such a transient area that like there's no sense of community. There's barely any sense of community. You really have to go and find it, and everybody's moving in and out of the area. So it's like, come
Mm.
on, guys, like I know you're flipping me off right now, but like, hey, we're still kind of in a small town, and I'm gonna see you again. I'm gonna see you again. We're like, we're not living in DC or New York, guy.
That's a great point. So, to go back to growing up in Montana, why don't you tell us a little bit about your history in sport and your history to kind of how you got to ultra running? I know it kind of goes to the military as well. So maybe just catch us up to speed onto how you got to ultra running.
Yeah, so growing up, I mean, like, I had asthma growing up, and like, I was kind of a nerd, just kind of like chilling out, hanging out with my friends. I never really played any sports. I would play like, a season or two of football or like a season of wrestling. My mom didn't like me wrestling because I got really skinny. And whenever I like bite onto something, I really bite onto something. So I was like going to practice and then running after, and I was getting like really small. And I really like the work aspect of like sports, but then nothing really held on. So I kind of just would like play something and then get out, and then play something and then get out. And it was the same thing with basically everything I did besides martial arts. I was always obsessed with martial arts growing up. My family like kind of broke apart when I was younger. There was like divorce and like everybody like kind of separated. So my biggest role models were like Bruce Lee and like the Raid Redemption and like all those sweet like journeyman like movies. So I've always stuck really strong with MMA, Muay Thai, Jiu Jitsu, and everything like that. So that was my one like fundamental thing that I really like stuck towards. And then I ended up going to college, and I was running. I was running and working out a lot. I was morely like a lifter, more of like kind of CrossFit, Olympic lifting style. And then I would run to like stay healthy. I would run to school with a backpack on, and I would have my fishing pool in college. And then right after class, I would run on the river and go fishing for like a couple hours and then go back to the dorm. So that was like my first foray of like kind of mixed like fitness. And then I was running down the road one day, and my brother, who was in the military, like stopped me when he saw me running down the road with like a backpack. He's like, "What are you doing this for? Like, why are you out here and why are you pushing yourself so hard?" And I was like, "I guess I'll go do something." So that's kind of how I ended up in the army. I did like a year and a half of college in Missoula, Montana. I just kind of dropped out, and then I had braces on too. And I had a year of braces on, like adult braces. It was I didn't get any attention by the girls in college with my adult braces. So I got my braces taken off a year early. So I still have like gaps in my teeth. And
Mm.
then I joined the military, and that's kind of where I ended up there.
That's funny. There's a couple of relatable points that I had in there myself. I've always been a distance runner, just to recap. I've always been a distance runner since about the age of 10 or so, but I wasn't able to run indoor in the Northeast. I grew up just outside of New York City, and I wrestled to stay in shape, and my mom hated it as well. I would put trash bags on. I was like, 80 pounds soaking wet. I would put trash bags on, and I'd suck on those Jolly Ranchers to keep
There
losing
you go.
water weight. And my
Yeah.
mom would just freak out. Like I was already just like, I'm still pretty wiry and thin already now, currently as an adult. But sixth, seventh, eighth grade, I was just wiry, and my mom hated it. I'd run on a trampoline with a trash bag and like 3 sweatshirts on. Yeah, it was
Hell
horrible.
yeah.
Yeah. I loved it, but it was pretty bad. It was pretty unhealthy.
Little savage in the making. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
I
yeah,
saw one of
totally.
my kids doing that, I'd be like, "Oh, this guy's gonna be awesome." What about you, Simon? Would you
My
grow up
parents
doing?
would never let me do any fighting sport or something like that, and I was always more of a nerd. But yeah, I can somewhat relate to some of the stuff though. We've been super outdoorsy growing up, especially with my grandparents, and doing silly. I'm quotation marking. Like running to school instead of taking the bus or anything, I was definitely doing that. When I was really young, in the middle of winter, we would just go with the cousin in the middle of the forest, no trail, no nothing, snowshoes, and parents were like, "Whatever, go do your things, just don't die and come back." That was fun time, but yeah, fighting would have been way too weird for me. That's for
Nice.
sure.
You have that Killian Jornet kind of upbringing right there.
Yeah, I mean, I read his book and I was like, hey, I can actually relate to some of the story. There was one he was saying where he was biking and his mom, I think, followed the sister or something, and he was by himself and he just continued forever. I was like, wait, that happened to me too, actually. I'm not as athletic as him, but I was like, yeah, I can relate to that a little bit. Just like I kept going and going and going. Yeah,
Yeah, the weirdest thing, like talking to people that aren't from kind of outdoorsy areas, is like they've never went camping, they've never like slept outside. Was with my family, and they had a little place that they rented, kind of like a farmland. And they're like, "Oh, let's make s'mores." So I grabbed a stick off of the tree and I like whittled a little stick to put the marshmallow on. And they were like, "Oh, that's unsanitary. What about the bacteria?" I was like, "What the fuck? Who the fuck are you people? What do you mean? It's wood. Like this is what you do when you go camping. Like I don't understand." We grew up just like when I was 15, I had this shitty, like the worst 1986 Camaro, straight like a straight line six, and it didn't have any heaters. And we would take it out 2 hours to the lake and just go and camp. And we would barely bring any food, just snacks, and catch fish, put it in tinfoil with some butter and some garlic, throw it on the grill. And like, if I think about my wife or some other people doing that, I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, but you would die. I would help you, but you might die. It's just so weird how different people grow up in America. Like it's a such a big country. You can have such a different like upbringing, and then
yeah, for
you're
sure.
on the
I'm
trail, and
curious. Do you think it's a generation thing also, or how are you dealing with your kids? And should I call child services?
I don't. I think it's an area thing, to be honest. Like
Yeah,
Mm.
I think the internet has made people a little bit more scared,
yeah,
just because they have It's basically like the news all the time, like. So I think it might just be a little bit too much information, but then there are still little savages out there. I mean, my daughter is 4 years old, and she was laughing and stomping on my throat this morning because I let them hit me as hard as they can. I let them like beat me up and like knee bomb me as hard as they can, so they're not afraid to like stand up for themselves. They're not afraid to voice their concerns, like at school, or if a boy starts picking on them, it's like, oh, they're gonna punch you in the throat and it's gonna hurt. So I think it's more. I think people are basically the same. It's just you get to see the weirdos a little bit more because of the internet. So it's a little
mm,
bit more in your face. And then the people that are like normal people are just living their normal lives. You don't put
yeah.
normal people on the internet because they don't care. They're not putting up a camera in your face all the time, and they're not telling you how to live. The people in Montana are just being people in Montana.
Yeah.
I also think there's a little bit of opportunity in there, or maybe lack of opportunity for some. One of my jobs when I came back from my time in the service, in the Marines, I came back to New York and I worked in an inner city youth kids camp. And so these kids came from New York City, like Midtown, maybe not Midtown because that's probably a nice area, but some smaller communities. The less privileged communities in the city, inner city kids, all they know is a concrete jungle from New York City. And we take them into the woods in Pennsylvania, and they slept in like rustic camps, like wagon wheel,
Nice.
like camps, like full on just sheets over like sticks type of thing, And
Yeah, yeah.
they and I cooked for them in a sort of commercial kitchen, but one night a week I would go out to each campground and cook on their campfire for them. And these kids were like amazed that like they didn't like some of them like were like feeling trees, like they didn't like believe that bark, like how bark felt, like. And they were just like inner city youth kids, and so like and they saw animals like bears and fish and the things you'd normally see in the Pennsylvania woods, and nothing too crazy, no like really dangerous animals, but they were like completely amazed at them, like even like natural squirrels, not like the city squirrels, like they were just like they all acted different, yeah. And the kids, their age ranges were all different, and the older they got, because some of them would come back and return, they slept in more rustic accommodations. And the oldest group, I want to say they were like eighth or ninth graders, they had to make their own camp from years of experience from being at the camp. And so it was a good experience for me. I was just a cook, but it was neat to see it, like as a sideline type of participant, and these counselors really kind of helped them out, and it was great. But I also think that inexperience was a lack of opportunity to go see those things. Those
Yeah,
families weren't going to get out there, and so this camp brought those people out there.
yeah, 100%. I mean, that's one thing that I hold very strong. It's like for kids and for people, all you need to do is provide opportunities. The more opportunities you have as a kid, as a human being, as an adult, the more you can actually grow and expand and see how other people are living. Like, I mean, like, especially with kids, if they don't have good role models, if they've just like all around like all this bullshit that's like on the internet, it
Mm.
only takes one person. It takes one person to like show them what they could be or give them the opportunity of like what they could actually be. That is so powerful for a kid. My role model was Bruce Lee. I mean, Bruce Lee and my brother. I mean, my brother was 7 years older than me and he joined the military. He was always like so steadfast in his ways. But then when he went to the military, I was like 11. So my role model was gone.
Mhm.
So I had like this figurehead that I had in my head, but then all the opportunities that I was able to find on, in Montana, in nature, in sports, in martial arts, it really shaped the person that I am. So if you don't have any opportunities, man, I feel so bad. I feel so
Mhm.
bad about like those kids in inner cities and even in like Montana and in those
Mhm.
smaller cities where it's like those one road towns. It's like, man, you got to provide opportunities. And that is one awesome, powerful tool that the internet has provided is like all these opportunities are available at your fingertips. It's just now you have to kind of wade through all the bullshit, all the Andrew Tates and all those freaking people online that are like, this is what a man should be. It's like, no, that's not what a man should be. You should take care of your family. You should work hard. You should love. You should learn. You should do all this other shit, and not like flash your money and like only work towards money. It's such a falsity online that's like corrupting our corrupting our corrupting the kids.
Yeah, well, it's true though. I mean, I think you're spot on. I think there's you need positive role model because unfortunately there's negative role model and some of them are really loud online.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, that's what people see. Anyone who has a developed brain can see through that and say, "Man, this is a pathetic guy, but he's very loud," and somehow some people will follow that, and that's very unfortunate. But the best we can do as an individual is to, like in your case, be a good role model for your kids, learn them how to punch guys in the groin. Apparently,
bro.
we'll revisit that part, but yeah, I'm curious. So you mentioned your brother was in the military before you. Has that kind of shaped your decision to join yourself and the path that you went forward with?
Kind of. I mean, it was. I always told my mom that I was never going to join the military because I saw how much she worried about my brother. But it was kind of
Mm.
always in the back of my head. I have this. I had a weird theory in my brain about journeyman, like the way of the journeyman, and that's how all the martial arts movies were kind of formed. It's like this guy who trained his whole life to complete a mission, goes out to the mission, and then comes back as a changed man, and then he affects the people around him. So when I started looking in the military, that's kind of how it is because it was a time of war. I mean, we were still in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
we were actually still in Iraq, and you kind of like go to war, come back as a changed person, and then you can affect the world positively in some way. So that kind of really like pushed me into the military when I was looking into what I could do. And then my brother was always like kind of that figurehead where it's like, oh well, he's doing good. He's like he got out, he knew he was going to school, and then I was like staying with him from time to time. So it did really kind of shape what I wanted to do. But of course, as the younger brother, I wanted to do more. So I kind of like was like looking at like, okay, he's a combo guy, so like, can I go into special operations, or how can I try to one up him a little bit, somewhat, the little brother mentality.
And you did, didn't you? So I believe that you went through a special forces selection process, if I'm correct.
I went through Ranger School, or not Ranger School. I was in Ranger Battalion, so I was in Third Ranger Battalion, and then to become a leader in Ranger Battalion, you had to go through Ranger School. So I went through selection. It was called RASP, Ranger Assessment Selection Program, and then you go through a deployment, and then you can like get your like B4 and go into Ranger School. So I did Ranger School like year and a half into my time in Ranger Regiment. So yeah, that was a
That's
fun
impressive.
that was a fun, a life changing experience.
Yeah, really
Was
impressive.
it
Yeah.
fun? Type
Too
two.
fun.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's exactly why I like. I mean, it's
Mhm.
exactly why I like ultra marathon. That's why I really got into it. It's just because like I love getting my dick pushed into the dirt and my face beat down and just like going to the extreme limit and then like coming out of it as something else, you know. So when I was really looking to like find that mission or find that like physical exertion when I got out of the military, that's what
Mm.
really like attracted me to ultra marathon.
Yeah, how much do you think the your kind of teen becoming a savage mindset has helped you be able to succeed as a ranger, which is, I mean, for people who are not familiar or people not in the US, it's not, it is impressive. It is something that not everyone can achieve. So curious to hear what prepared you for that.
I mean, I think it might have just been I'm a stubborn asshole. I
Mm.
mean, there's no it's really weird because I don't even know. I think it's just something in me where I've just like when I was in wrestling, just like with martial arts, like when I bite onto something, I really bite onto it. And being able to put basically everything into one mission, like
Mm.
physically, mentally, emotionally, like education wise, like working out, like basically everything, every part of your like persona or person that you are, you have to put it in to being a ranger. At least those first couple of years. There are people that like kind of shitbag like later in their military career, but to get there, you really have to push hard, and you really have to see like what you're made out of. And going through RASP, it was getting pushed to a certain limit where it's like, oh, can I keep going? It's like, well, let's just see how we go, because like basically RASP is a 8 week course, and the first 4 weeks, first 3 weeks, you're just getting destroyed the whole time. Like you're running all over the place. You're just getting PT'd to death, push ups, like ruck marches, freaking. You go out to this place called Coal Range, and you're just not sleeping, doing land navigation, and getting destroyed. And then they just wait until the sun goes down, and they just smoke you all night to the point where you're like hallucinating. And there's this wood line that's like 400 meters maybe, or I would say like 400 meters. It seems way longer, and they're just like, at any time, go touch the wood line. You just have to run as fast as you can, go touch the wood line, come back, smoke you, do a bunch of push-ups, do a bunch of ruck marching, do whatever it may be. They had a little pit they called the pit of woe. They put our rucksacks on. They were like 35 to 45 pounds, and we were just going in circles. So they had three circles of guys. Outer circle had blue lights on their flashlights. The next circle had red lights on their flashlights, and then the middle circle had white lights, and they're all going in different directions. So this is like the second day, you're completely tired, and you're just running in circles with your rucksack on, and it's like you're like in a disco, and you're just hallucinating, going fucking crazy. And then they're like, go touch the woodline, and then you go back to the pit of woe, and then you're like, what the fuck is happening? So I honestly don't know. I would love to be like, oh, I was like, when I was a child, I was left out in the woods, and I had to crawl my way back, and I knew the man that I was. I brought that into the Ranger Regiment. But, you're 19 years old. I was 19. I didn't know who the fuck I was. It really taught me who I was. Like when you're in the military at that age, especially in special operations, and this is why people hold on to it so much. Like I hold on to the Ranger Regiment, and I'll always hold on to it, like almost like a little bit too much. But that's why people hold on to like their frats, and that's why people hold on to like their football team or their high school football team. It's because that's when you're actually becoming a man, and that's when you're like choosing who you're going to be almost for the rest of your life. because that's when you're really becoming a man. That 18 to like 24-year-old, it's like that's when you're really shaping who you are. And that's what I was like, shaping the person that I was in. So I didn't really know who I was, and that really like cemented like, yo, you don't fucking quit. And
Mhm.
if you don't quit, the people around you won't quit. And who really fucking matters is like the guy to your left, the guy to your right. You don't really matter if they don't matter. So that's kind of like it was more of a like, it's more of a, this is cementing who you are than like, this is who I was and that's why I got through it. If that makes any sense. So that was kind of a long-winded
Yeah.
tirade.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. You're pushing your personal limit, physical limit to the point, to the breaking point, and you in yourself decide that, look, no matter what the fuck happened, I'm not quitting. I will do everything I can to reach that goal. And also, it sounds, but maybe I'm reading a little bit into it. There's also a sense of community from being in there. So of course you're developing as an individual, as a man, but also as a team. You realize that you cannot do everything by yourself, and that without the people next to you, the community that you're part of as a ranger, that's how you will actually get the job done. You don't get deployed as an individual, you get deployed as a unit. And there's a sense of community and comradeship that will forever be part of you, as opposed to a frat house where you got drunk that one time and it was epic.
I mean, we got drunk a lot in
Well,
Ranger.
I assume.
But yeah, 100%. I mean, like my leadership style now in the corporate world and like in business, it's completely driven off of the military. It's, I need to be able to trust you to, like, if I'm a leader and I have a graphic designer, I'm not going to be looking over the graphic designer. You know, I'm not going to be like, oh, what are you doing with that line, or what are you doing with that? And that was really, really like formed by the military. And I was only in E5. Like, I was like one of the first levels of leadership. And it's still cemented so much that you have to trust your guys and you have to trust what they're able to do. Because if you're like a squad leader and you're on a blocking position, you're just locking down this area and they're shooting their guns and they're talking their guns, and then you're the squad leader and you're over there over on top of them and tapping their legs and you're going, now you shoot, now you shoot, now you shoot. You're not watching your fucking flank. You're not telling your other guys what to do. You're not showing, you're not like actually watching the full battleground, and you're just getting in people's fucking way because you don't trust them. Like, you have your job, they have their job, and you have to trust those guys. There's some oversight, like, okay, why aren't they talking properly? I'm gonna go check that out. But other than that, like, you have to be able to trust your guys and you have to be able to put your full faith in your guys, whether it's in the military or whether it's in the corporate world. And
Mhm.
I think that's so important. I mean, I've had a lot of trouble in my past jobs because of leadership and like micromanaging, but you know, that's just because I know
Yeah.
what real leadership is and I get frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I haven't served in the military, but I think it's a two-way street. So you as a team leader need to be able to trust the guy that he's gonna do his part. And as a I don't know, as a schmuck or underling like myself sometimes, I feel that I need to trust that the guy above me is taking care of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I'm not just covering my corner and then the flank is not being protected or whatever. I'm doing my little part, and I know that if I'm doing that, the person above me will take care of the broader picture so that I can refocus on my task.
Yeah.
And respect goes both ways also.
Yeah.
I will respect a leader that really has personal integrity, and hopefully that will change how I act myself.
100%. I had this boss in Boston. I love this guy. I was working for like an insurance company, and he started as a salesman, and he just always wanted to like do sales, and like be a ground beater and like all that. And I would have to like push him back, and I was like, Andrew, I need you to be a big dick, okay? So you sit there and you big dick, you go play golf, and you know, you smooge with the guys, and when I need your help, I need big dick to come in. And he was like a frat guy. He's like this frat dude that just like got into sales and like insurance. So, and I would call him up. I'm like, hey, this adjuster is giving me a hard time. I need Big Dick to come in, and he was like, he would like go in and like go crazy. It's like, you know, you can play those lines too. So
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah, it's about upward management also, using the, it's not as manipulative, but for me myself, yeah, I mean, sometimes I know how to use best the person above me as the figure of authority. You know, sometimes when you're working, say, at McDonald's, and say I need to talk with the manager about that, that's the use. You don't want the upper echelon to already be there, but sometimes you say, hey, I need the big dick swinging right now.
Yeah.
And in the corporate world, sometimes would be like, look, I cannot influence the CEO, but my boss can.
Yeah.
So I won't always go that route, but sometimes, like, hey, like, we're going into this big meeting, make sure that the CEO is on board with this project. You take out your, I don't know, you take out your dick. I don't know. I don't have that kind of language, guy. And for anyone listening,
Slam open the door.
we we told Wayne before that swear words are totally okay. So it's on us. It's definitely on us. But yeah, it's, you put your dick on the table, you measure, and then after that, decisions are made. But more seriously, I think it's about understanding that everyone has an important role, and also, if you're a good leader, you're going to be able to communicate that to the quote little guy, that your role actually matters. Do that appropriately. That's important, and together we can do something incredible.
And the little guys are what make the company. I mean,
Hmm.
there's only one leader, but then there's 50 guys under them. Without those
Yeah,
50 people, what the fuck are you going to do?
yeah,
You don't have a company. So
yeah.
you have to trust every level, even the people cleaning up the office. Like you work in a pigsty, morale is going to go down. You can't use the bathroom. You got Legionnaire's disease in your freaking bathrooms like they do in Crystal City up here. It's insane. It takes all these little moving pieces for a good company to actually run, for a good like unit to actually run, and like and a good leader to oversee it. I bet. I bet Brian. I bet you have a lot of experience with some bad leaders in the Marines, huh? Or did you get some good ones?
A little bit of both. I mean, I think I got a couple years on both of you, so maybe just more years in life where I've had some bad experiences. But it's interesting because I think you're trying to cross the lines of like the corporate world and maybe trying to like bring it to like an everyday type of person. But obviously, the huge differences are that like what you're doing in the Rangers is like life and death, and you need to believe in those people, and they need to believe in you, and all of it is one big cog, one big giant cog, and it all works together. In the corporate world, I mean, we see people get fired and let go and shift jobs for 25 cents more an hour next door.
Yeah.
And that's like regular life. That's like first world issues that we have here in the States. But I think, on that ground level that you're talking about back in the Rangers it is life and death. Like you need that guy to have your back and he needs you to have his because you're both watching each other's back. And it's life. It's a bigger stake.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, I don't know. I could go on about the corporate world like so much because,
Sure.
yeah, I mean, I got out of the Range Regiment and I went and worked in a cubicle and it was culture shock. I was like, whoa. And the place I went to work was there people that were in the same position for 20 years. Like the same thing. No upper management, no movement up, no movement, nothing. They're just like, I'm going to punch my time and that's it. And if you're not trying to advance in the Ranger Regiment, if you're not trying to like get a leadership position or move to a specialty group or whatever it may be, you're gonna get RFS. They're gonna kick you out right away. Like
Mhm.
it's always
Eat,
constant progression, or you're
yeah.
dead.
Eat or be eaten, right?
Yeah,
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 and I mean, I think the corporate world is like that too. I mean, and people find those spots, those desk jockey spots where they could sit and wait their time out. And they're probably needed. I'm sure that their leaders know that they're sitting in that cubicle for the last 20 years, just waiting, biding their time, right? And they're a little more expendable if it came down to it, if they needed to do some cutbacks or something. You never know.
yeah. And that position, I mean, that job that I got in 2 years later, they fired everybody in that company. And I was like, oh, dude, they were like people that worked there 30 years, 20 years, like, and they're just like, sorry, it's not profitable anymore. Bye. It's like, God dang. So,
Yeah, but it speaks to personality also. I think some people are comfortable having their little job and they have stability and they're okay with that. Whereas some people are a little bit more perfectionist or always want more or to improve, which is definitely more my style. The first time I saw people like that, for me, the culture shock was academia compared to corporate world, which I don't think is as hardcore as the Ranger, but it was the same shock. I arrived somewhere and I was like, wait, that person is really not trying, is really doing the bare minimum. But
Mm.
sometimes that's someone who's valuable. You have stability in that role. You
Yeah.
know that they do this very specific task very well, and we know they're not going to move anywhere because we treat them all right. But if you have to have extra work done in the evening, they're going to be like, and then that will be it. Whereas for me, I would say, yeah, give me the extra task. I want to do more. I want to show that I can do more, that you can trust me with higher responsibility, so that tomorrow, I'm leading project. But that was when I realized that was not everyone thinking like that. I was shocked. I was, wow,
Yeah,
that sounds fun.
I don't want to sound like I'm talking shit about like cubicle workers or like people like that, because I've met people like that, and then they're pursuing like their black belt in jiu-jitsu, or
Yeah.
they're amateur Muay Thai fighters,
Mhm.
or they're like striving for something else. And if you're just trying to collect a paycheck and like do something that's fun and comfortable and like live your life, so then you have the opportunities to advance in something else, it's like, fuck yeah, I fucking love that. But like, you have to strive in somewhere in your life. I think comfort is like such a falsity that like just makes people like slowly die. Just, it's basically like waiting to die. And it's like, if you're not trying to like be a better dad, be a better mom, even if you're like religious, like be a better Christian or whatever it may be, like just strive to be better in something, and it'll make your life so much better. Like, if it's not your job, go out for a run, be a better husband, learn some shit, freaking, if you're the best D&D player in the world, you have a badass freaking mage that you put your cloak on and you can make the best freaking adventure possible for you and your friends. Hey, like, as long as you're striving, that's all that fucking matters.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot about finding purpose and finding growth. And I think the default position to find that for a lot of people, at least for me, was through work. But I can definitely see that it's evolving, and maybe that's part of becoming a little bit more mature. I still want more. I still want to grow at work, but hey, racing is important too. And I'm not gonna cancel a race last minute because my boss says, "Hey, can you get that project done over the week?" And I'll say, "No, like I'm racing Leadville. I'm gonna do that after the run when I'm sleep deprived and
Yeah.
don't mind the typos, but during the run, no, I'm not gonna cancel it. And kind of setting boundaries is probably a healthy things too. So
Yeah, that was a big weird transition when I first got out of the military too, was like trying to separate my life out from work, just because the
mm,
Ranger Regiment, it's like, especially as a young guy, I think the older guys like E6, E7s start figuring it out that you have to have a separate life. Like, you have work life, you have fitness life, you have family life, and you can strive in all those different sections. But like, when I first got out, it's like, I want a job where I can put every single thing into it and be fulfilled and have a mission that I work towards. And that's really rare, I think, in the civilian world. Like,
mm,
I have to be able to be happy with my job, and then I can be happy with pushing myself physically, and then be happy like putting my family and getting and like building up my family. And I think that's like a really weird transition for a lot of military guys.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like, I mean, I can envision it too, but it sounds like, you were at the pinnacle of a military career, at the tip of the spear, just getting after it, like enjoying like putting your dick in the dirt and doing the mud, doing just challenging yourself like every day in and out, and the guys around you are doing the same thing, and everyone's has that 120% level, and then you get out and then like you're trying to figure it out. All right, like
Yeah.
I want to be fulfilled at work, but like now you're having to like chop it up and divvy it up across different aspects. Like I'm going to become an ultra runner, and I'm going to put some energy into that. I'm going to put obviously energy into my family, and then I'm also going to put energy into work. And it's not so everything in one basket. Am I assuming that?
Yeah, 100%. Then I had to figure that out probably like the first 5 years I got out, that
Hmm.
like, you're not going to get full fulfillment from the military. Also, have to stop you, I was not the pinnacle of military experience. I was in special operations, but there's like so many guys that are so above us, and that are doing such cool stuff. And like I was a mediocre ranger anyway. I was trying my damnedest, but man, there's some motherfuckers in there. There's ridiculous people that just are like still just going out there and getting it, and at those higher level units and doing some crazy stuff. So that's just some. I don't want the military or the veteran community coming after me, because man, I was mediocre at best. But
Well, we
yeah,
appreciate the humbleness, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yeah, 100%. It's that weird, like, your job isn't going to be your everything when you get out, and a lot of times, unfortunately, when you do get out and you try to make your job as everything, that's where a lot of veterans like get into trouble with alcohol abuse and all that other stuff that goes along with that, because there is this like something missing, you know
Mhm.
and in the civilian world you do have to kind of separate out your life, or else you're gonna a lot of people will fall into those traps.
And then Wayne, where did ultra running come into play? I mean, was it at the end of your military career? Was it a means to kind of challenge yourself as a civilian, getting out of the service? Where did the ultra running come into play here?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in the military, I read the Born to Run. I mean, I'm pretty sure like 80% of ultra marathoners started with Born to Run. So I read Born to Run, and I always had knee problems, and I started transitioning kind of to like zero drop and minimalist shoes while I was in the military. And Nike had this like system that they had during that time where their drop went lower and lower, and it was like a very like a different types of shoes that you could like slowly transition out of. So I started running a lot more and transitioning more into barefoot and into zero drop shoes. So I really got into running when I was in the military. Running was always my worst like thing
Mhm.
ever since I was a kid. Even in the military, that was like my worst event. I'm really more built kind of in the CrossFit body, like kind of lean and like a little bit most muscular. Like my weight to pushing ability is a little bit higher than normal. So I always just kind of focused on that and didn't really focus on running. And then when I got out of the military, I kept running. I went to California for a little bit, like right outside of San Francisco, and I started getting like really big. I started like kind of powerlifting, and my back like got really like really wide. And I was running down the hills in San Francisco, and I just felt like this juggernaut. And I was like, "Fuck this! I'm done with like lifting so much weight." So I started running, and I reread Born to Run, and I kind of just like I kind of like just kept upping the miles. And then a lot of documentaries started coming out with like Jim Walmsley, and um like a lot more YouTube videos started going in. I was like, all right. And then Goggins started coming out. I was like, oh, this guy's a little intense, but okay, he's doing some cool stuff. All right, calm down, Goggins. Not everybody needs to eat rocks and freaking run 100 miles every day, but I like it. I like it. And then I decided that I was gonna try to push myself, and I was kind of missing a mission, especially a physical mission. I was doing a lot of Muay Thai. I was kind of going down that route, like a kind of amateur fighter kind of route, but I didn't like getting punched in the face. I didn't like getting kicked in the head. So I was like, okay, well, the part of Muay Thai and the part of Jiu Jitsu that I like is like pushing my body and like being exhausted and still trying to perform and still trying to like do these kind of intricate moves while exhausted. And I was like, well, let's go with running. I hate running. It's my worst fucking thing that I ever do. So I know I can progress over and over again because I fucking hate it. So I kind of went towards the thing I hated the most, and I signed up for I saw the grindstone, and I was like, that looks like a motherfucker. So that was my goal. And the first sanctioned run, I never ran a marathon, like a sanctioned marathon. My first sanctioned marathon was this year. The most I've ever ran for an actual race was like a 5K. I did a lot of movements in the military, but they're not sanctioned. They're
Mhm.
just kind of like getting yelled at and getting pushed to the limit with a rucksack. But I did the Catskills, okay, to do, and it's a relay race, and they have a solo division. So I ran that the first time to get into Grindstone. So that was kind of why I chose ultramarathon, because I sucked at it. I sucked at running and I needed something to like really push myself. And I like that like progression. So anything that I can like progress in. Also, working and starting a family and then going to a gym and then driving to the gym, doing the class, coming back, showering. That's like 3 hours. You go and run for 3 hours. That's your long run. You only have to do that once a week. You run for 2 hours a day, every day. That's like a really high level of like mileage. You run for 1 hour a day. That's still pretty good mileage. So like, you know, for time's sake, you can do a lot with just running.
Yeah, at its bare bones, it's simple, right? I mean,
Yeah.
no matter how much you like it or not, it's you put on a pair of running shoes and you get out the door. Of course, when you get up, we all buy the extra gear, which does actually add up after a while. But you are a pretty high mileage guy. I thought I saw you running maybe like 80 to 90 miles a week at peak season this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I kind of just started pushing up the mileage and I'm probably going to start going back down. I pushed it up to around 80 to 100 miles a week. And for the freight train 100K, I really felt it. And then for this OSS CIA 50 miler, I like blew up in the beginning. But then in the middle, or like when the heat started going away and I started to rally, I could feel all those miles. I could feel them, and I
Hmm.
was like, "Oh, the training's there." So I was able to like consistently push on the second half, and that's real. That's what that high mileage is really good for. My body responds pretty well to it as long as I take care of my knees and I do my like prehab work for my knees. I can ingest pretty good mileage. But yeah, I tried above 50 miles a week, and then when I'm really starting to peak, I go around 100.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a lot for myself. When I go to that, I feel it, and at some point I feel that I'd rather do a little bit less mileage and then do a little bit more speed work. But I think what you're doing is perfect, right? Like you look into, okay, how does my body react? Oh, I can put more mileage. Like, yeah, fuck it, like let's put more mileage. Like you put as much as you can and stop just before getting injured. But yeah, that's the perfect training.
Yeah, and it's one of those fun things about running an ultra marathon. It's like you get to play and you get to test and you get to see how it like messes with your body. So I'm kind of on a David Roach uh, rabbit hole right now. So I'm gonna start trying the 10K like speed deal with a little bit more cross training and like being a little bit more specific about it. Just because when I do run a lot of mileage, it does take a lot more time. I'm usually running twice a day and a lot of time on the treadmill just because Virginia is so hot. It's like fucking running through a swamp in the summer. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ.
I'll take it right now. Right now, today, I'll take it though, man.
I don't know, man. A nice snow run where your like lungs feel like your lungs feel
Yeah.
like they're about to freaking shatter. I don't know. That's fun sometimes.
I heard that Montana is not as hot in the summer. Maybe you should consider
That's what I'm
it.
saying. I mean, I we just moved down here like a year and a half ago from New
Yeah.
Hampshire, and running in New Hampshire
Hmm.
was awesome. I
Hmm.
love New
I
Hampshire.
bet. Yeah.
There's some good hidden trails and training on the East Coast that doesn't get a lot of attention, and a lot of good runners are starting to come out from the East Coast too.
I
Yeah.
think Simon has a little experience from there. Didn't you live there for a little bit or up there?
Yeah, I was in Boston for a little bit, so
Yeah,
Oh.
we were always going to the Whites and the Presidential Traverse and the Pemmy Loop. That was kind of
Hmm.
yeah,
the big
nice.
ones we would always do.
Yeah, I lived in Rochester, or like right outside of like Rochester, New Hampshire, like near Dover. It was 30 minutes away from Mount Major.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So that was like kind of like your first entry level or like entryway into the White Mountains. And then I worked in a lot in Boston. I was a public adjuster. Um, that's with the big dick guy. So I'm very familiar with all those trails. It's pretty nice. My training grounds there was Pawtuckaway Mountain up
Hmm.
near there. If you ever ran in that area, but it's a good area. It's a good area. Although I don't like the people too much. And this might be a spicy take, but any area that is proud of being assholes, that's how New England's are. We're assholes, and that's what makes us different. It's like, all right, guys. I know you're nice. You put up this facade, but there is like a really strong sense of community in New England towns once you get past that. Like, fuck you, buddy.
Yeah. But these trails are difficult to run, I think. Ever since I moved on the West Coast now, I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
it's actually fun to run on trail. You don't feel like you're gonna die all the time. It's just the switchback also exists on the West Coast, whereas the East Coast it's just straight up and it's technical up, technical down. The West Coast, especially Lake Tahoe, I was like, wow, this is
Yeah,
it feels it's the kind of thing you can only go one direction. You start on the East Coast and then you go West Coast. The other way around would I think I would complain a lot. Or a lot more than I already do.
yeah, and I saw it during the JFK 50 miler, first like 10 miles or so when you're on the Appalachian Trail. I was like, I blew up again. I don't know what the hell. I think it's just like overstressed because of work and I was a little
Hmm.
overcooked for this race. But we were on the Appalachian Trail and they were so, a lot of people, especially where I was kind of like in the lower mid pack because I was dying the first 10 miles and people were so gingerly going down those trails and I was like, oh, these are probably like city runners and like marathon runners and like, you know, West Coast runners. And then I was like, hey, I'm just going to bomb down these hills a little bit and I'm going to start having a little bit fun. And that really turned around my race. Was just like,
Hmm.
i'm going to I'm gonna bomb down these hills because I'm used to it. I'm used to it in New Hampshire, and it's fun, like jumping from rock to rock. And yeah, you twist your ankle, but hey, it's fun.
How did the race go actually? Yeah, I'm not familiar with the JFK too much. How's the course? How did it go for you?
Yeah, if you ever want to do a faster 50 miler, I would strongly suggest going to JFK. There's aid stations like every 5 miles almost. It's super flat. That is one thing. Like the for like 35 miles, it's super flat. But you like start in the city. There was a shitload of people, like 1,500 or like 2,000, around 2,000 people. So it's like a huge, like almost marathon style like start, and you like run on the road for a while, then you hit the Appalachian Trail, and when you're running on the road, you're like working your way up to this like satellite tower or like satellite like thing on top of this mountain, and for whatever reason, I was walking, and my heart rate was like spiking to like 190. And the night on Thursday, I got 5 hours of sleep because my wife wanted to sleep in, and she's like, "Fuck you, you're waking up with the kids. I'm not." I'm like, "Oh, you shit." I got 5 hours sleeps on Thursday, and then the night after or before that, before the race, I got 3 hours of sleep, and I kept waking up in puddles of sweat. And I think it was just stress. I think it was just nerves or something. And I got 3 hours of sleep, of broken sleep, and I was completely dehydrated. I tried to chug as much water and electrolytes as possible when I woke up, but there was just something wrong. And my heart rate kept spiking. I was walking up the hill and it was like spiking up to like 180, 190 over and over again. I was like, what the fuck, dude? I trained so hard for this bullshit. Why?
Mm.
And it took like maybe around 10, probably like, actually, I think my body started feeling normal maybe around like 20 miles in, 13 to 20 miles in. And by then my legs were already cooked because of all the like tension, like being angry. You know, when you're like running and you're kind of like stressed out
Hmm.
or like tired, you're kind of putting a little bit extra tension in your legs. And then you can really feel it on the later miles. Your energy levels are good, but then your legs are just never like really turning on. But it was a test in patience. It was a test in like fortitude. So I'm pretty happy with what I accomplished there.
Did you have a good
You did
finish
what?
then? It
Sub
sounded like.
I'm sorry.
Did you have a good finish then? Did you kind of like bring it back at the end?
Yeah, I kind of brought it back. It was kind of a little bit too late to like kind of like really push how I wanted to push. My legs were a little bit way too heavy, but I finished. You know, I got a good like strong like sprint finish. I got to muster up some aggression from there, but that it was all right.
I mean, you
I'll
did the
probably
sub 10 hour, right?
yeah
Yeah, it's a
yeah
decent time.
I got, I think it was 9 hours and 54 minutes, and of course, this is just me talking. I mean, I have the worst self talk. I always talk shit about myself, and that's something I'm working on, especially during the race. Because when I'm happy and I'm smiling, I always run better. But yeah, I wish I could have pushed a lot more because I pretty much lowered my mileage, or not lowered my mileage. I was pushing really hard with the speed training, and I wasn't able to utilize
Mm.
that training that I wish I could have. So
I had a really similar experience at Cocodona in May with Simon earlier in the year. I suffered the first 90 miles and I got so deep into my own thoughts, like just buried in them, like, this is the worst. I'm not, why I'm even running this. Do I really belong
yeah,
here? All those things that you could, all that negative talk that you could just pile up on yourself. And, and really at mile 90, I decided I was either the next aid station was only like 6 or 7 miles. It was a shorter section. And I said, I'm either going to make it or not, but this next section is going to be telltaling. I can't do this for another 160.
yeah,
I got to figure this out. And I kind of let it go. Like I kind of like gave up the battle of like where I thought I needed to be in the event and what my expectation was. And all of a sudden everything just relaxed, and I think finishing strong, like you were talking about at JFK just recently, I finished strong. I didn't have a sprint finish by any means, but at that distance, but I did well going up Eldon. I finished well. I think it it was a good experience because I finished with a good result, not a result, but like I finished strong, and so it carried me through the summer. So I think it's like if I started out strong and I ended really poorly, that it would have been a different story, or I would have had a different taste in my mouth of how that went and what that looked like.
yeah. I mean, I honestly feel like 50% of ultra marathons is like mental, and it's just that
Mhm.
attitude and like how you're like able to utilize your brain and utilize your training, utilize your fueling, and if you're in the wrong headspace, like this has been my worst year of ultra marathon because we moved to this area and people are so aggro here, and I changed jobs 3 times this year, and like a lot of things have been going on, and I can feel it in my training. My training is not absorbing properly. I've been putting in a lot of mileage, but I'm like, instead of peaking, I'm kind of getting sick, and then
Mhm.
in races, I run usually like when I'm tapering, and then I go out to the race, I usually run slower than I do in training, and that's usually an indication of like stress. So
Yeah.
like I completely get it. I completely get it, and it really does. It really is just kind of like a mental switch. And on my last race, the OSSCIA, I was literally just running in the middle of the woods in the dark, and I was forcing myself just to go. I was like running, and I was like, "Oh, just force a smile, fake it till you make it." And I was
Mm.
running in the woods, and I was just going, and I was like making myself laugh because I was like doing this stupid like smile. Anytime I would start getting poopy, I would just be like, and it fucking worked. It's just like that weird little mental switch, and it kept me on track of like being in a good mental space for the races. And I think that's really something that I'm going to be focusing on a lot next year, is really focusing on speed, focusing on getting some muscle back, and then being in a good mental space
Mhm.
so I can carry it into my races.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're so right, and I'm sure all of what you've done in the past, before running, is helping you, or you can dig deep if you have to. Like the potential mentally is there for sure, but you have to be in the right headspace. And sometimes we're not. I mean, that sounds almost weak to say, but sometimes you're not in the right headspace. For me, it's weird. I try to be positive, like you say. I don't force myself to smile, but sometimes negative emotion can be helpful too. Like a little bit of
Mhm.
anger, getting angry a little bit, and like angry at myself for kind of being a little bitch at the last aid station. I was sitting down. I shouldn't have sit down. Like, come on, Simon, like, don't be a little bitch. And like, that pushes me a little bit more. Generally, I'm more going into the gratitude feeling. I'm happy to be here. Like, I should be grateful that I'm able to run. It's not what I was hoping or expecting. And then I either have to decide, like, it's a branch. And I really saw that at Javelina this year. Either I decide to accept that my expectations were too ambitious, and then I dial it down and I feel fine about it. I'm still finishing. Or sometimes like, no, 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 sub 24, fuck that, fuck that, fuck that. And then if you're able to kind of do it right, you can really turn things around. But it's not easy to do it. I wish it was that easy. I wish it was, because you're right. It's almost like a switch, but it's not as easy as just pulling the switch. It will happen like this, but you can't just access it and say like, okay, now I care, like now I'll do anything for it. It's just, it feels that way, but to achieve it is a little tricky, and you need to understand yourself and trick yourself a little bit into
Yeah.
reaching your full potential.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant battle. You even if you flip a switch, you got to keep flipping that motherfucker. You got to
Yeah.
keep clicking it. You got to keep clicking it.
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
light bulb went out. Okay, I got to stop real quick, change the light bulb. All right, flick it back on, and we're gonna
Yeah.
get. I mean, I'm sure. I'm sure after that 90 miles that you did in Cocodona, did you have any other low points? Like, were you able to work your way out of those low points too, or were
To
you
be
Yeah,
good
honest,
you
the
Brian.
rest of the way?
but they weren't as low. Actually,
Yeah,
I mean, I heard my thought process like when I went into those lower moments after mile 90 was like, oh, this isn't as bad as it was.
yeah,
So like it didn't seem that deep of a hole. Like I wasn't digging myself into this, never ending spot. But yeah, I mean, but the whole thing, I guess really what I was trying to get at, or even the most relatable spot was like everything on my body was sore. It wasn't like, oh, my foot hurt or my arm hurt or, like my knee hurt or something. It was like my whole body was tense and I couldn't
yeah.
like, and that tension was like basically holding my muscles back from firing the way I wanted them to.
Mm.
And it was like a self-created tension because I thought I needed to be somewhere else in the course at that time.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And I honestly feel that's why like outlier performers can perform the way they do because when you actually look into their mentality, they're like, I'm the best motherfucker in the
Hmm.
world. And they go into their competitions thinking they're the best motherfuckers in the world. And they're able to work and train like they're the best guys in the world. So they don't have that tension. They're
Hmm.
not like, oh, well, I gotta perform. I gotta perform. They're like, oh, I know I'm gonna perform. And even if they're like putting pressure on themselves, they know they're capable of it. And I mean, that's just kind of like a weird theory I have, but I want to be able to be that confident. But I do have some pretty bad self talk. I do call myself a pussy a lot.
Yeah. Well, it goes both ways for me. The switch like that doesn't stay on or off. Sometimes it's the other way. Sometimes like I never give up, but I might give up on the time goal, for example, and say, "Oh, this is definitely not
Hmm.
happening right now." And I start walking, and PD walking a little bit, and I was like, no, come on. And then I switched back on. I was like, wait, but you had already made the decision to slow down. Now you just made it worse. It's like, no, 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 I can still do this. I can still do this. And I think for me, it's because when you push to, say, keep a certain pace, you're really hurting yourself. So
Mhm.
then the negativity will flow in and say, no, you can't do it. But when you walk because you gave up a little bit, then the energy comes back. It's like, actually, I feel fine. Like, sure, I have blisters. Sure, it's painful, but I think I can push a little bit more. But there's, at some point, for me at least, there's a finality of like, this is how I'm gonna feel until the end of the race. And I kind of know
Yeah,
it. And I was like, all
yeah,
right, this is life right now. This is life until the end.
yeah. I mean, for that JFK 50 miler, when in the first mile my heart rate spiked to like 190, I was like, at mile 3, I was like, I'm fucking done. Like, I overcooked myself. Like, fuck this. I'm out of here. Like, this is stupid. Like, why am I even doing this? And I had those thoughts. I had those thoughts, and I told my wife this, but I didn't really speak on it too much. Like, I wanted to quit for 43 miles of that fucking race. I was like, yo, like, I'm so done. I'm so stressed out. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, it's cold. Like, fuck this. Like, I don't want to do this. And I just kept going. I In my head, I was just like, just do it. Just fucking do it. Don't be a pussy. Come on, just keep fucking going. Just do it. Like, why are you here? Just do it. And I was like, no, fuck it. I don't want to do it. And then at like 43 miles, I was like, my legs are destroyed. My knees hurt. I've been freaking just tensed up over and over again. Okay, hey, we're gonna get done. We're gonna go. All right, let's have some coke and let's enjoy the finish at least a little bit. So, um, when you were talking, Simon, that reminded me of your Fuji 100
Mm.
film, like when you didn't get any sleep or anything,
Oh, geez,
and
that
it
was
seemed
bad.
like you were having a terrible time. And I was like, yeah, this is awesome. These are the videos I like.
Yeah, I mean, I started the race basically like barely slept in the 48 hours before that, and we were starting in the evening. I was like, oh my god, like I'm sleepwalking at the start. This is not a good day. The other one that was like that, and you were actually there, was Vermont 100. I
All
had
right.
this shit like real bad even before the race. I was like, I knew you were there, and I was hoping to say hi. I never saw you, but actually looking at the film afterwards, we passed each other at 75ish or something. But man, that was not a good race. And I'm curious for you, how do you feel about JFK? Are you happy that you pushed through, and are you proud of that? Because for me, these races, yeah, Fuji that I was sleepwalking from the start, or Vermont that I had the shit, not my best performance, and definitely, in a way, I'm disappointed in how I did in terms of outcome. But I'm very proud that I found a way to make it
Hmm.
happen no matter
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I'm such a stupid like masochist. I like the more it hurts, the more I had to struggle, the more the prouder I am. And it's like, okay, that didn't work. So let's see what else we can do. Okay, that how I was living my life, or like this the amount of stress that I had and the training that I was doing, and it resulted in that, and I had to push for like 43 miles like thinking about quitting. Yeah, I'm super proud of that. This is awesome. This is exactly what I signed up for. I wanted a gut check. I needed a gut check, and I like me personally, especially how this year has been going, I needed to know that I was able to keep going, and that really solidified it. And like I was like at a certain point around like 35 miles, I was like, I'm fucking done running. Like this is stupid. I'll just go into something that I actually like am somewhat good at. Like at least I can like enjoy it a little bit. And then like thinking back on that, I like cringe so much. Like if I can cringe at what I was thinking about, I know it's a mission well done. And I thought, and one of my thoughts too was like, oh, you already did this for Grindstone too. Like this like last year's Grindstone, my feet completely blistered over in like the
Yeah.
first 40 miles, and I basically just death walked for 60 miles straight in the rain, like just making my friends stay out there for 32 hours straight, and I just like sludged my way. I was like, oh, I already did this and nothing changed. I already freaking pushed myself. Nothing changed. So what's going to change now? Just quit. Like this is stupid. Why are you just beating yourself up? Just beat yourself up. And then I get done. I'm like, okay, so what's up with springtime? So what's a springtime 100 miler? Because I didn't do a 100 miler this year. So let's do like 2 or 3 100 milers next year. So you know,
I feel, for me, the like looking back at what I did, it's the opposite. It helps me push through because I think, well, I've already done that. Like I have no excuse to not do it. I know I'm capable of doing it, and right now I'm just being a little bitch. Like, come on, you've done it in the past. You've done harder one in the past. You were in a harder spot before. Why do you complain so much? Like, oh, you didn't sleep. Come on, Simon. Like that's nothing. Like you went through grad school. Like that's fine. You don't need sleep. Sleeping is for pussy. So like just do it. That's it. Just do it. Otherwise you'll be embarrassing yourself. And I mean it works. And that's what I said. Sometimes it's negative energy that I try to be positive with people for sure. I would never go to someone and say, you're being a little bitch right now. Unless I know that's what they want. But for myself, yeah, sometimes I will do it. And if it works, man, whatever. It works. It's all that matters.
Wayne, thinking about not sleeping that much. Gosh, you sound busy. I mean, I get two little ones at home. You got a full time job, probably even more. I'm not sure. If your wife works. I mean, there's all these moving parts, right? And so, where do you fit it all in at? Thinking of not sleeping, like where does that fit?
that listen, my treadmill gets abused. I abuse that thing. Every time I get a treadmill, I'm like trying to break it. So like a lot of my runs are done when my kids are asleep in the dark, or during a lunch break on the treadmill, or whenever I can sneak it in. So I try to fit it in as much as possible, and then you know not I don't get to play video games that much. And then a lot of times I don't sleep that well because I'm like watching anime in the middle of the night, or catching up with my like cancerish YouTube videos that I like to watch. So I mean, that's probably another problem with my stress this year, because I've been watching a lot more anime this year. In the middle of the night, going to sleep at like 1:30 or 2, and then waking up at 7:30 to get my kid on the bus, which is not a good thing. And then, but you know, sacrifice. You know, if you want to complete a mission, if you want to do something, you have to be willing to sacrifice something. And I'm gonna have to start sacrificing my anime watching at night so I can actually absorb the training. But I don't get to play as many video games as I want. I mean, I am a level, I'm max level on Throne and Liberty. I have all my traits padded up, and I run multiple dungeons every day. But I might have to cut that out this coming season just so I can actually get a little bit more sleep.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I mean you're a treadmill for people that don't follow you on Instagram, which will give the handle and everything. You post your funny videos where you're carrying your kids or shit like that on the treadmill, which like I always think of you with these. But also there was a video where I was already following you obviously and like really like what you were doing on YouTube. But there was one where you were just basically saying what was happening lately, and basically you promised your kids to go to the pool, I think, then you had to go get your car serviced or something like that, and just like everything happening that led to you running in the middle of the night. I was like, you're having your priority in the right order, and sometimes that makes it for an unpleasant situation. But you had promised your kid the pool, and I was like, man, I'm charmed. Like there's this ranger dude, and like he's talking about bringing her kid to the pool. I can't remember the detail of it, but I was like, oh, that's cute. Like that's a tough guy doing the good dad job. So good
I mean,
job, dad. Sorry.
if you
Yeah.
ever told if you ever told a 4-year-old that we're not going to the swimming pool because daddy has to run, and you're not okay with that, you're a monster. You're a monster. You can't. I have two girls. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they're like the cutest things in the world. And like, I'm, I'm just, I can't say no to them because it's like, I know how it feels to like be in a divorced,
Mm,
family and not have my dad, and like not and being let down. And it's just like, man, I don't want to do that. I want
yeah.
to be a good dad, and I want to be a good husband. So if it means, instead of going out on beautiful trails, because there's a lot of good trail systems here, and just grinding away on the treadmill, hey, I'm going to grind away on the treadmill, and I'm going to watch some anime while I'm grinding away on the treadmill. So it's still going to be fun.
Mhm.
But that's also why my YouTube has been dead. I mean, I
Mm,
haven't done a YouTube video in like 3 months because it's just been so busy. Like
yeah.
I don't have the time, and I refuse to let it cut into my family life or
Yeah.
my time with my kids. So once that starts, and it's starting to get situated right now, I have a couple of YouTube videos in the works right now because things are actually starting to chill out. So hopefully I can get back to the internet grind.
Yeah, yeah, fully relate to that. I mean, obviously, I don't have kids, but don't have kid yet, and so that's definitely gonna play into how much I'm racing, how much I'm taking care of YouTube. But also, you mentioned about your daughters not wanting to disappoint them. There's also the point that they will punch you in the nuts. I think that's a good argument, also, but you give the cuter explanations. That's good.
Yeah, yeah, and don't be afraid to have kids too. I mean, like
Mm,
I've ran way more with my kids because it makes you more litigious with your time.
yeah.
It makes you cut out like what you don't need. Like I used to like chill out and do a lot more, and like just a lot more wasted time. But with my kids, it's like very
Mhm.
scheduled, very
Yeah.
like, hey, like this time is for my kids, this time's for my work, and this time is for working out. And if there's anything extra, then I can put it in the pot. Like I want to go out and do Muay Thai, I want to go out and do Jiu-Jitsu, but right now it's not going to happen because there's too much stuff going on. So I I think a lot of people are afraid to like take that plunge, but man, they made me so much better. I was such a cocky asshole coming out of the military, and like I thought my shit didn't stink. And then with kids and my wife like pushing me down, it just makes you a better person. It makes
Mm,
you like really solidify the man that you want to be and the father that you want to be, and the like general vibe that you just want to actually put out in the world, instead of just like, I'm the best and fuck you guys, like I was a ranger, blah blah blah. That shit doesn't mean anything to your kids. Like your kids look at you and you're their dad. It does not matter if you're a ranger, if you're an ultra marathon, your dad. And you're limping, but hey, can you still pick me up? Can you pick me up? Like, can you carry me? Can we go get ice cream? It's like, yeah, I can limp around and let's go get some fucking ice cream. Let's go.
I can relate. Wayne, I'm a little bit ahead of you. My daughters are 13 and 10. And
Nice.
actually today I not ran yet. I'm going to go run in the dark here in cold Western Colorado
Hell yeah.
with my dog. But we opted to go to the community center and play basketball and volleyball for 2 hours in the time that I was actually going to run. So I totally get
Nice.
it. And I remember all those moments, and I think from my perspective now, being my daughter's 13 and 10, that they get it too. And that same thread, like not being worried about, bringing them into the world. You don't have to change your life, I guess. Like I just included them in the ultra running. They go to all
Yeah.
the races. They
Mhm.
volunteer now, or at least the older one's old enough to volunteer and kind of gets it. They know so much about ultra running from obviously me, but they know so much about ultra running. When I ran the Boston Marathon in 2019,
Yeah.
in the airport, my daughter asked if it was going to take me all night long to run the Boston Marathon, and I said, I hope not. I mean, that was like my answer to her. So all they know is like overnight running. They didn't realize that, hey, there's a 4 hour race that Dad's going to do, and he'll be done by lunch.
Yeah, yeah. I always say, Daddy's gonna go out and get his feet bloody. So, and they're like, are you gonna stay in a hotel? Because they love staying in hotels. And I was like, yeah. And they're like, are your feet gonna get bloody? I'm like, probably not for this one. But yeah, I'm super excited for like that 10, 13 age range too, because it's like
Mm.
that's when cross country comes in. So if they want to get into running, or if they want to get into like cycling or anything like that, it's like hell yeah! Like now I have a little running buddy. Now I can take like my easy days, probably not even easy days by then. Then they'll be pacing me for like my speed workouts. But yeah, like I get super amped up thinking about like being able to run with my girls in the future, and like there's such a strong like female contingent right now in trail running and like sub ultra trail running, even marathon. These women that are coming up are like freaking destroying. Like it's awesome. Like Courtney DeWalter like kind of started it, and like some of these sub ultra women are like fucking destroying. It's awesome. It's awesome to watch that Golden Trail series on YouTube and stuff.
Mhm.
Like those chicks are like beast. And I'm like, oh, you can do that too. I'm planting the seeds. I'm planting the seeds little by little. I'm like, Daddy got destroyed by a bunch of ladies. A bunch of women beat Daddy. Like they beat me by hours and hours. Like I didn't win at all. Like I get freaking like ran over by women all the time. And like you can beat Daddy too. It's like, and I can see the little sparks in there. It's like, yeah, we can beat him up and we can beat him at running.
Well, Wayne, we appreciate your time. We really enjoyed the conversation. It was really relatable. Where can our listeners follow you at?
Yeah, so I mean, everything is just Wayne Capacillo. I mean, you can find me on YouTube and Instagram. I mostly do Instagram and YouTube. I'll have to get back onto on YouTube. I should be putting some more stuff out pretty soon. This winter is probably going to be more about like kind of regaining the muscle. So I'm going to be doing a lot more lifting uh, and speed workouts, and then probably move into maybe a 50 miler in spring, and then maybe an early 100 miler. So I'll be on Instagram, I'll be on YouTube, and hopefully I can stay consistent on those guys to follow the journey. It's a lot of poop talk, a lot of swearing, a lot of me just like getting my ass beat. So a lot of gut checks.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely be following along. I checked out your Instagram page already and saw actually what Simon was referencing earlier with the kids in your arms on the treadmill as one of the newer or more recent posts. But thanks again, Wayne. We wish you the best, and we'll be in touch, and hopefully we'll catch up to you soon.
Yeah, yeah. Nice talking to you guys.